Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Good, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I had a question. I've got a little bit of confusion within myself.
Okay.
Because I've heard you, the topic that you're talking about tonight, I've heard you before say what's your deepest value and what's your deepest truth, or at least that's how I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And my deepest value, I've always known what it is. It's integrity.
Okay,
and
great.
I don't even think of it as a value because there's just like no way to ever do anything else to the best that I can, of course.
Yeah, it's so innate to you, isn't it?
It's so innate. It's what's always, I don't know. It's just, it is.
Yeah.
But my deepest truth is, because I've had some times of awakening where I felt extraordinarily free, like myself was pretty gone.
Mm-hmm.
So my deepest truth has more to do with freedom and wanting to know what place I was in, and it's kind of like more of a searching thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know what I should be doing, literally, how I should be on this life, who God is, who I am, just like this like deep search.
Yeah.
Which by the way, when I was in those free spaces, those questions completely disappeared.
Yeah, right.
I wasn't there.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but now it's just like, I just want to know. I just want God. So that's like this huge driver, and that's very different from the fact that everything about me. Well, I can't say everything about me. Integrity is kind of like who I've always been. It is my deepest value.
Yeah, I understand that. So first of all, let's start with the first one. So integrity is actually a really great example of, it is a soul value. It's been part of you your whole life. That's probably, soul values are like that. They are often just so a part of you that you don't stop and reflect upon them a lot just because they're like the air that you breathe, but they are orienting you in your life. So those are also, that might feel like a little more relative value because it's always been with you as a human being your whole life. But it's also, I would say it's a great example of a soul value too, because integrity is also connected with truth, to be truthful, to be honest, to have great integrity. It's all part of the same spectrum. And of course, truth also then, the deeper meaning of truth also extends into the truth of your being, truth of everybody else's being. So sometimes even when you open up a value that looks somewhat relative, when you begin to unpackage it, sometimes you see, it's actually connected to something that's maybe bigger than I imagined, and just starting to notice that and feel that can be really useful. And then when when you have this wonderful sort of transcendent experience, when you as an individual seem to fall away, and there's just the experience of the freedom of being. So what if we were to, even though I would agree and with you that what I'm going to talk about it is sort of translating the experience of freedom. And the experience of freedom is a kind of unified experience, so it's a kind of experience of unity or union. And what if we were to translate that transcendent experience of being into something that's more relative and approachable? So the experience of freedom, number one, you could just translate that into a sort of soul value. Then it would, if it's a soul value, then it's seen as a transcendent way. That would mean it's something that you honor and value and desire for not only yourself but all beings. So then you become, then the question becomes, okay, then what would it mean for me to be an expression of freedom? So that when I'm relating to somebody, I'm relating to them in such a way, for example, that they are truly free to be whoever they are, to hold the views that they hold, to whatever, right? So that's one thing. So you're like, okay, what if I translated that beautiful, expansive freedom of being and saw, no, that can also be a relative human value, something I desire, not only for myself, but for everybody. How would I orient around that? And how might that not necessarily dictate, but inform the way or the style that I relate, not only with others, but life itself? And then also there's the experience of freedom of being. As I say, we experience great freedom when we are internally unified, right? So there's a kind of unity with it when we experience freedom, when there's happiness that goes along. We feel good. We feel very, very, very good. When we feel very, very good, we tend to be loving. We experience love to some extent. And so you start to see where, okay, what if I was going to translate this wonderful, expansive sense of freedom into something that I could work with as a human being, right? Then I'm looking at how could I be in such a way that I was a bit more an expression of freedom, or I was a bit more an expression of something undivided, or even more approachable. How about if one of the other words for an undividedness is love? And love is the natural outcome of not feeling as divided. The less divided you feel, the more loving you are. And so what if I took that as a value? See, any of these you could utilize any one of those that I mentioned, right? And then see, the thing is, you're working with these kind of creatively, right? There's not here's the 5 steps of exactly how to go about this. But if the next time you're with, say, in a engagement, or even if you're not, you're just going around doing whatever you're doing, right? What if I was to wash the dishes in the most unified, open space of being that I could? What would that be like? What would it be like if the next time I talked to somebody that I held freedom and unity and love as a great value without even telling them that? But how might that change the way that I relate to the next person I'm with if I'm just conscious that these values help connect me with my soul? They help connect me with that wonderful, free, expansive experience of being. You get the feel?
Yeah, I think so. And then also, as I'm listening to you talk, I realize that it's a huge overlap with integrity.
There you go. Yes.
Really, pretty much the same thing, just in different form.
Now you're getting it.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about the soul values. And I didn't say this because I want people to be able to discover this for themselves. But when you find one, they kind of connect to all the others. Yeah. In a way, right? You have to be in integrity, to be loving, really. You can't be loving and lying at the same time. You have to be integrity,
No, it's very, very true.
Right. And you have to be integrity within yourself. Otherwise, if you're out of integrity within yourself, you're going to be divided. And division isn't really an expression of that undivided sense of freedom. And so, they all kind of connect. Mm-hmm.
But I guess what, just to get some clarification, what feels different is when I was transcendent, I guess is the word that you just used. I mean, I wasn't referencing anything.
I know you weren't.
Referencing itself.
Yes.
So from that perspective...
Right. So
I'm not really, these are very, very different things.
From that perspective, if you're in that perspective and it's all spontaneously unfolding, great. You don't need at that moment anything that I'm talking about.
Right.
Right? Yeah. If and when you're in that perspective, you don't necessarily need to be inquiring or looking into what I'm talking about necessarily. You still may, you actually may, but that's a whole, we'll maybe get into that later. But in general, yeah, that's what I said. But the truth of the matter is people that have those experiences, they are generally not in that depth of the experience all the time.
No.
And so what I'm saying is
in that experience.
There are very particular reasons why we're not. And the reason why we're not are basically unconscious, and they unfold unconsciously. So the reasons why we tend to not to stay there is without even knowing it, without even being aware of it, because it happens at a deeply unconscious level, something in us decides something like, okay, now it's my turn. We've had freedom, okay, and now, now I'm going to get back to the business of being me because I have to go to the job, or I have to talk to somebody, or I have to go to the store, or, for whatever reasons. And like I said, almost always this is happening without you even being aware of it. But there is something like this that actually happens. There are reasons that we don't stay in a open, clear, unified state of being. And usually those reasons have a whole lot to do with unconscious decisions that are being made that kind of say either, okay, my turn now, the separate ego, or just the sense of, I don't even know, how could I be in such an open space and function in life? How could I even do that?
That's what usually gets me, and just flat out fear. Like, I don't know where I am.
Fear is probably the predominant one of all of them. Yeah, fear. Right.
But I guess why I'm getting a little bit hung up on this is because I almost feel fraudulent. Like let's bring this. What would this freedom be like in life, like you're talking about? And it's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't the same thing. Am I trying to grasp at something? I can't figure out how to make it not be like grasping.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense.
But I think, even as I said that, I think I figured it out. Because I think the other way is grasping, and this way isn't grasping.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Grasping is saying, I'm not going to take anything but that.
Right. When it all happens for me and it's all spontaneous and I want to be in that experience all the time, that's grasping.
Yeah, I got it. And you're talking about just the opposite.
Yeah, and as a byproduct, you will be more and more and more in that experience.
That's good.
Because like I said, there are reasons why when we have these openings that they come and go, because in our relative experience, there's often other agendas that are playing out. And by starting to kind of translate this into relativity, and of course it might feel somewhat less than totally authentic because you're doing a translation, right?
Yeah.
So you're translating something that's beyond words and ideas and intentions, and basically you're translating it down into a kind of intention. But like I said, we also live in relativity, and in relativity, we damn well have to be able to translate our experience of being, because, by the way, we're doing that all the time anyway. So when you feel fear, for instance, your fear will usually be translated into action or the lack of action. So when you feel fear, you'll feel hold back. I want to hold back. That's translating the experience of fear into an action. It's happening without your intention, of course, right? It's just It's just, it's all happening automatically. But again, if you really noticed, if you really just look at, any being that you might feel is a good representation of a unified state of being, generally their mode of being in the world is an expression of certain fundamental values. Whether it's Jesus or Buddha or anybody, it may be the case that these values were flowing totally spontaneously for them, but it is kind of funny that both of them talked very directly, although in different language than I'm using, but they talked very directly about translating the deeper experience of being into action. Jesus could be very, very harsh in his condemnation of anybody that wasn't doing that. And Buddha basically called it right action, action flowing from the enlightened state. And sure, when it's happening totally spontaneously, well and good, forget all about it. I'm with you. But it's when when it doesn't seem to be flowing completely naturally that I'm saying, hey, let's look at it a little bit like this. Okay?
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of working with it, be patient. You just kind of work with it and experiment, and the dots kind of connect inside you after a little while, and you'll start to get a deeper, more sort of embodied sense of what we're exploring here, Well,
this has really helped. I'm glad you took my call.
Great. Me too.